It's actually interesting because it several different ways it impacted me. One of them is the fact that in the beginning of my chapter, I refer to an incident that happened when I was a teenager involving one of my friends. And I actually reached out to that friend and told them that I was going to be sharing this story and wanted to give them the heads up and offered to let them read the first draft when I had the chapter written. So that helped me connect, at least for a little while, with this individual and find out, just want to make sure everything's still okay. The other process of it that was fascinating was the writing part of it. I mean, I've written chapters for other compilation books before, but they've always been like short things, like a page, maybe 3. So with this one, it was interesting because I wanted to make sure that I did the story justice. And I was afraid that it was going to take me forever to write it, when in actuality, all it took was for me to sit down and start typing. And it's interesting because when you read the chapter, the first word, the first like 3 sentences talks about how I can hear my mom calling me, telling me that I have a phone call. Because that's how I remember, that's the beginning of the story that I'm sharing, was receiving a phone call from my friend. And it just flew. The words just came right out of me, right into typing it out. And I was surprised that when I went back and read it, it didn't need editing. It was exactly as I remembered it. Now, granted, my memory might become more clear later on, so more details might be needed. But at this moment, it's exactly what it needed. And all the parts that would give any kind of indication as to who my friend is was changed to my friend or they, because I didn't have permission to share that. So it is a little bit distant in the story because of that, but I wanted to honor their identity because I didn't have permission. So it's still hard to think about what has happened with this friend and with other friends, because I've had several friends who have tried or died by suicide. And it's heartbreaking because you can't see it coming. There are no outward signs. And when we asked teens who had attempted why, their response was, I don't know. And the only reason it's an I don't know is because they didn't see any other option at that point in time.
So I actually started telling my story in like a journal entry sort of way. And I never thought in a million years I would ever want to take writing on as a multiple gig thing, which now I do. And, writing for me was always hard. So throughout school and stuff, I didn't do much. I got through high school English on Cliff Notes. I did like one major writing assignment in college. And I don't know how I did it, but I got through it all. So writing for me was always hard because I always felt weird writing my thoughts out. And when you're talking about your story as it regards to, mental health and trauma, you're talking about feelings, you're talking about emotions, you're talking about very powerful parts of your existence. And I quickly realized that I'm pretty good at it. And I grew up as kind of a geek. I read a lot of comics. I'm still a sci-fi guy, so maybe it's that imagination part of me that kind of allows me to write. But for me, it's very cathartic. And when I first wrote, I'm writing my own book about my whole story and giving more details than I do in most other things I do. And I realized after I wrote this initially, the first draft of it, that it was like 600 pages. It was like 187,000 words. And I realized that most of it was me venting. Most of it was me healing. It was me facing what I had been through in the form of words instead of the actual event or images or harm or whatever it was. And I was healing. And so when I took on writing the chapter here for, Scars and Stars, I knew exactly what I wanted to write. And at first it was daunting, being like, all right, my whole life story in 3,500 words, but I did it. And I was able to write it in a way that I've never written about my life before, which showed me, going back the last 6 or 7 years that I've been writing, that I've done massive amounts of healing that I wasn't aware of. And I was able to use that as strength and motivation with everything else that I do, because writing is very cathartic. And I've heard this from other people, and this is so important to get experiences down on in book form, because it's all education, and again, it allows people to learn they're not alone, and being able to see words, digital or on paper. I'm an old school guy, I like my books, but to be able to see words and read them your own way of someone else's experience is pretty huge, and a very unique thing to be able to do. It's huge. And even, I don't know if it's just getting it out, like that whole, they used to say, write it down and then throw the paper away or something like that. And that can be cathartic. That never worked for me. But I don't know if it's seeing the words and being like, picking up on the parts of the sentences and paragraphs that are important to what you're talking about, and be like, oh, okay, it's out of me. It's literally on this computer or on this piece of paper or whatever it may be. It's out of me. And this is what it looks like. It's just words. It's no longer the event. It's no longer, the pain or the images. It's out on paper, and it's just words.
So I had writer's block, believe it or not, to write this story. I actually accepted a meeting from Christopher, and we sat down, and he's like, what is your end goal with sharing your story? He's like, start there. And he said, even if you have to write it down and stare at it, that might be the place to start, or start at the end because it's more fresh, and backtrack. And what I ended up doing is writing down like the power that I want my story to have. And I had to write my story in 2 parts. The first part was like the beginning of my life through to high school. And then I had to stop and give myself a break, because those were like the worst points of my story.
For me, mentally, I found it to be harder to write my story than to be on several hundreds of podcasts, or to even film a commercial based on my life, or even up to the point where I read the movie script about my life and said, wow, this guy's got a messed up life. And then I said, whoa, that's me.
It was really, really hard for me to accept that not everybody saw things the same way that I did.
Angles. Writing, and my wife is a writer, I know writing can often be a very solitary thing. And you're sitting, whether it's in front of a computer or a legal pad, and you're spending that time every day, and you're writing, and you're working to create something, and there are times it can be extremely satisfying, there are times it can be frustrating, and you're chiseling away, and you're creating a piece of art, and that's what I really feel it is. And for me, it was really that first opportunity to take something that I've spoken about quite a bit and put it down in writing. And for me, it was the challenge of, how do I put it down in writing in a way that becomes very descriptive and can draw the reader in, rather than just through the auditory senses. And so it was fun on many levels. It was challenging on many levels. And I feel like at the end of the day now, I have this piece of art that I can offer to people to help them along on their journeys.
Yeah, being part of this project has a really positive impact. And if Dana comes to you, or if you need help, I would definitely go to the Realize Foundation. I mean, it's not just Dana and Demi, it's all the people I've met while doing this project. Even Jeremy was in the last 2 books, I believe, and I met him through work actually, and he was the one that sent me to Dana. And it's even that sense of community and talking to somebody. Like, I wouldn't have thought by talking to Jeremy I'd end up here, but ending up being here is where I needed to be. And that happens, that coincidence or divine inspiration happens every day. And being part of this project to try and help people overcome not just their traumas, but to try and get them to realize that but to be part of this project gives you a way to express yourself and release that tension. It gives you a community of people that understand some of your traumas, if not all of them, and it's a family essentially that you don't have to get rid of. It can be there for, and I think that's what community and life is all about. And the Realize Foundation has given that to me and so many others so far, that hopefully they can do that for you too.
And so I think getting involved with the Realize Foundation and doing this process of writing to inspire and encourage is something like, I feel like it's, a passion of mine. Like, yes, I hear about what you're doing. I'm like, yes, people need you. Go, Dina. Like, get everyone on board. Tell the world. Because it's a silent thing, especially in the church circles. I think people don't talk about it, and they need to be talking about it.
Okay, so first of all, being a part of this series for me, I think has been a really wonderful experience. I think what you've done is, aside from bringing a group of really wonderful individuals together to share their story, I think you've also given us a little bit of a gift in that I certainly am using the book a little bit like a therapy session. There are things that you have in your mind, but when you have to put things on paper in the form of a book, that, by the way, is also scary. But again, that is another place where I feel the fear and do it anyway. This particular chapter was, I was a little skittish about writing it, but I did it anyway. And also, I think it also helps me to a little bit get over the fear of what it is that I'm trying to do at the same time. It's very difficult to explain that to people or articulate that, because you have to do it to really understand what I mean. So I encourage anybody to definitely write their story, some parts of their story. Even if you don't feel like you want to share it with the world, write it, because there is some therapeutic aspect to writing. And this Scars to Stars, the Realize Foundation, the mission of, really helping people to realize, as in the Realize Foundation, to realize that they're not alone.
And by walking through each chapter and sharing my story, what I've actually been able to do is find my life's purpose as being a suicide advocate. I have lots of goals and dreams that I never thought I would reach. And, I think by writing and speaking and just being a part of other people's lives in a way that I never imagined has allowed me to find my life's purpose. So when you write in a book like this and you share your story, there's at least one other person out there in the world that needs to hear what you've gone through. Mm-hmm. You might think it's shameful, but it's not. We're not alone. None of us are alone unless we choose to be. So sharing your story, and what an amazing group of people. The authors in every single book have become friends, almost like a small family. We support each other. Dina, you do an amazing job pulling this together. Between you and Demi, who is our editor, what an easy process. So if you want to share your story and you want to be a part of something a little bit bigger than yourself and help other people around you, by all means, reach out to the Realize Foundation and say, hey, I'm interested in writing my story to help others, or even
experience has been. Well, first off, I want to say thank you, because you made it a pleasurable experience. Because I'm telling you, I've been thinking, and talking about doing a book for a long time, and getting me off of that procrastination mode of I'm going to do it. That island called Someday I'll, but I just kept talking about doing it. I said, no, I just decided and then did. I said, let me just do this. Then what comes, and I discovered I'm not the only one. Other people kind of go like, well, I don't know if I can do this. I wonder if I'm going to do it right. I wonder this and that. Stop wondering and thinking and just do it. Because when you just start, things just happen. God opens up doors. And so, you know what I did one night? I said, you know what? I'm not going to prolong this. The date, I came in late because I learned about it, and I came in during your process. I think it was halfway through. But then I said, you know what? I'm a doer. So if I'm going to do this, let me just do it. So I prayed, and I just sat on my laptop, and I just started going and started typing, and God just helped me through. I just kept going and kept going. I actually had fun. And then when I finished a task, I just got excited, because now I'm doing what God told me to do. It's a collaboration, but it leads to doing your own book. But now it's getting out what my experience was so I can help people. So when I did that, I was just very excited. I said, wow, I pushed past that procrastination. See, PPP, push past procrastination. So I did that, and Demi makes it, she's the editor, and it's like, she's very kind and nice too, and helpful, and you guys are just always there, and you made it simple, and I really appreciate it. I'll keep saying that. And I'm going to keep telling people to come and do a book with Miss Dina Brown Mitchell and the Realize Foundation, because it is awesome. And so are the people that get involved. Yes.
Well, my experience with Scars to Stars has been wonderful, which, because I tell you all the time. It's just so wonderful to have this kind of a platform where you're not doing this by yourself. And I was thinking while you were talking about the project of Scars to Stars, and I think that is such a huge factor, because when you're struggling, or your family is struggling with some of these deep things that we all are writing about, it is so easy to have tunnel vision and think that you are the only one. And that is not reality at all. Like, it's not even true. Like, your neighbors literally could be dealing with the same exact thing, or your friends, or whatever, like you're talking about. And so that in and of itself, and so that it just having this platform to work on these things has been not delightful, but it has made it so it's just not that hard. Everyone else is doing the same exact thing. And yes, my experiences are my own, and they're my own personal, and I am the only one. Like, even I'm an only child, so I literally, or parts of my story, I am the only one for this specific story. But to know that there are others who, to just have that solidarity, has been wonderful. And to be able to have a platform, we've talked about this briefly in some of our other discussions, is to have the platform to even, like, I had a lot of therapy when I was a teenager, and I've always had people who are close to me that know all about my life or about these different experiences. But to just have a space to sit with it and examine it and look at it and think it through, and allow your heart to just be however it is on any given day, that has been fundamental. That has been, honestly, I probably won't understand for a year or two. To just have a space to just be with it it's not, and not, how do I say, it's not just having the space to discuss it. Like, I've done that. I've had the space to discuss it, and you're just like, all of it, like you're doing something. You're in those places of therapy. It's like trying to figure out what are you going to do with it, and you're processing the memory and the emotions, and it's almost like work. Where this has been just more an experience. If I don't know if that makes any kind of sense, but without having to, okay, X, Y, Z, this is what we're doing, and these are our marching orders. It's just to be with it. I think at one point I wrote something down about it just has given space to like pull these things off of the shelf. Like, they're there. They're things that you have addressed. They're things that you have dealt with. They're things that you've had conversations with others about, but just to give them like a life of their own. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's the best I think I have.
We know that Scars to Stars is going to go on to do bigger and better things. And I'm looking forward to being a member in the Realized Foundation, because I realize that we all have a story, and our story matters to God. Our excellence matters to God. And I think, the joy of the Lord is our strength. This book, writing it, has strengthened me to be who I know God created me to be. And I think when you write it, it's different. When you're a part of something this big, you realize how big a God we serve.
Years later, and I just started to realize that I needed to share my message. And in the beginning, when I started to share some of the things that I put in the book, it was really frustrating, and I wouldn't say frustrating. It was very sad, and because I had to kind of relive it, and I actually had to tell more than just one person, and I'm putting it out to the world, and I have to live with that. And so it really mentally drained me, but it was all good, because now you can ask me the same things, or I could share those same things, and it's fine. It just rolls right off the tongue, and it's because I know it can help people, and being as honest and transparent as I can to help that one person out there who feels alone is all that's all that really matters. And as far as the experience of the book, it was really nice to do it. It was nice to find, I'm always looking for other ways to get myself out there and just to tell my story and to try to help people however I can. So all that correlates through the podcast to that. So that was a very comfortable situation, because I was already at that point content with my story and who I am.
Well, I thank you. I hope it's a blessing somehow, some way to people, multiple people. I hope maybe I can tell a different story maybe later. Mm-hmm. But with the stories that I sort of heard, I don't think there's any about, being a foster child. So hopefully this will serve its purpose as well as all the other stories. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I know I probably wasn't as available as most folks because of my busy schedule, but I still feel grateful and humble that I'm part of this, and God is so good to allow this to happen. So.
Oh my gosh, it has changed my life in so many ways, because I actually was able to take what was in my mind and in my heart and put it on paper to let the world know. A lot of times when we go through incidents, we feel isolated, and we feel like we're the only ones because we don't get to express. And even if we did talk to someone, they wouldn't quite understand where we're coming from. But this gave me a grand opportunity to put my thoughts on paper for people to read, because I'm a believer, Dina, nothing just happens. And that when people begin to pick up this book and they begin to read from each author's chapter, that they will start the healing processes of their own lives and be able to identify areas in their own lives that, hey, I wasn't alone. There is somebody just like me. And if God is doing it for them and brought them out, Certainly they
Well,
would do it.
I think those stories that you talk about in the next book are really powerful because there's a lot of people that don't speak about this. They keep it all held in, and they do need to talk about it. And the only way what they do is they go to YouTube or they go to books to try and hear about other people's experiences and learn from those experiences. So I think this is really powerful, Dina. I say really powerful. You know, what you're doing is so important to each and every one of us, and it doesn't matter what gender you are, what religion, you know, what nationality you are, where you're from. Everything you're doing is in great support of society and how we can try and improve that through these experiences and through people that have actually been through real life experiences and being able to talk to others. So I think it's hugely important.